So yeah, there are a ton of different ways that you can create content online for your small business, from social media posts to newsletters to freebies and webinars and workshops and so much more. So while it feels overwhelming and you have all of these options and different ways to create content to market your business online, in my eyes, it just boils down to three specific types of content. You can create visual content, written content, or audio-based content, or some combination of the three. And as a small business owner, you might have certain strengths or weaknesses when it comes to creating each of these different types of content. So how do you figure out exactly which one to create for your small business? That's what we're going to get into today. Before we dive into the specifics here, I do want to let you know that as a small business owner, eventually you are probably going to create all three different types of content or a combination of the three. And you should always be trying and testing out new and different content types. Even if you feel like you might not be good enough yet or have the skill set, you should always be trying new things because sometimes some specific pieces of content are much harder to create than others, and you need to get the practice and repetition in. Practice truly makes perfect, and sometimes I look back on my videos that I created 4 or 5 years ago and I think that lighting looks awful. I sound crazy. There are too many pauses. The way I edited that was weird. But it has led me to where I am today in my video content creation journey and being able to have YouTube channels and podcast channels and things like that. So just know that you got to get started somewhere. But the purpose of this video is to help you determine the primary type of content that you should be creating right now for your small business and what makes sense for you. We're going to talk about how to lean into that specific content type and how to pick different platforms that you choose to show up on based on your strengths, your weaknesses, and also what your customer wants to see. So first, let's dive into visual content. And this is anything from graphics to photos to videos, and one that you were probably already creating and that you're the most familiar with. So you're already probably creating videos for TikTok or maybe creating graphics for your Instagram feed, but it could also look like the digital downloads that you have as freebies. No matter what, you are probably already creating this content. It's already in your arsenal. Some you might like more than others, but it's something that you are familiar with. This is something that you feel most compelled to produce because vast majority of content platforms really cater to visual-based content. In fact, it's a requirement for most platforms. The pros of creating this specific style of content is that it really is going to help your potential customer, your potential client, your potential audience member get to know you as a person, as a business owner, or as your brand. Photographers might lean in heavier to obviously showing their photo-based content. Coaches might lean into sharing graphics that give off an inspiring message or show a client testimonial, whereas a hairstylist might show off transformations for their clients in more of a video-based type of visual content. And despite what you might be feeling, you have to know that this is some of the easiest content to create. Typically, it has the lowest barrier of entry because you can create so much of this on the phone that you already have in your hand. You can use cheaper or free tools like Canva to create graphics. It can be the easiest kind of marketing that you want to do for your business because it is something that you are so familiar with as a consumer, and then you're comfortable using these tools throughout your business, throughout your brand, so it seems super intuitive. This doesn't mean that I want you to show up on video 3 or 4 times a day on TikTok or force yourself to create these beautiful photoshopped images. No, just lean into your strengths here and kind of figure out which type of visual content you like to create the most. So a couple of cons to producing this kind of content is that it does take time. And while the barrier to entry might be a little lower, sometimes you might have to learn a new skill set. You might have to learn how to design in Canva and navigate the platform. You might need to understand lighting to capture better photos and videos. While it might only take you a couple minutes to record a video for Instagram Reels, it might take you far longer to edit it. And that's a skill set that you have to refine and develop over time. Or maybe you capture a great image on your iPhone, you go to post it on Instagram, and it's just kind of crickets. Doesn't get the engagement that you want. You might have to amplify that with some graphics and things inside of Canva, and you have to learn how that software and that product works. So yeah, sometimes this stuff does take a lot more time. And quickly to dive into who exactly should create this content, I would argue that it should be a priority for almost every small business owner. This content is really hard to get away from. Most major social media platforms or blogs or newsletters, they have some kind of component that is visual in nature. You just have to decide which one is easiest for you to create and pick a platform based on that. So if you prefer to create videos, lean in heavier to Instagram Reels and Stories and maybe TikTok. But let's say even if you're a stronger writer, learn how to create specific graphics that might go on Instagram or LinkedIn and have a longer caption. Identify your strengths and play into them and pick platforms based off of that. Let's dive into the second type of content that you can create, which is going to be written content. This is where you're going to think of your blogs and your newsletters and threads and Twitter, and even the captions that you have to write that accompany your more visual content. And maybe you've tried shortcuts with different templates or using AI. And honestly, written content seems to be the one that most people struggle with. But written content, especially when it comes from your voice using storytelling, can have a huge impact in the way that you market your business. So some of the bigger obvious pros of this kind of content is that it's really going to help with your SEO. And if you're not familiar with SEO, it's search engine optimization. And it's a way for you to be discovered on the Googles, on the Pinterest. And now it's even important for Instagram and TikTok as they're bringing these search practices onto their platforms as well. So written content for your business has to be strategic, but it also has to speak to your ideal customer. Because a lot of the times, written content has higher conversion rates than just a simple photo. You got to look at things like an email newsletter. Personally speaking, and a lot of my peers in the industry, email is still number one seller for us. We might capture attention with a nice visual, a freebie, a download, but once that person gets that freebie or download, subscribes to our newsletter, that's where they convert into a paying customer. Or think of the details on your sales page or in your Instagram captions. That written content gives them all the details that they need. So it's very important. The biggest con here is that writing is a skill set that you have to develop over time. You have to be really good at writing to really lean into this style of content, plain and simple. And this one is easier said than done. And it's a skill set that you do have to really practice and develop and kind of curate over time. And this is why good copywriters are expensive, rightfully so. So who should create this type of content? This one I want to leave for the more seasoned business owner. So if you're newer in business, I really do want you to focus more on that visual style of content and just try new things out. Don't worry so much about writing a blog. Don't worry about doing a newsletter right away. And then with your captions, keep it short and simple and use language in the way that you speak. Whereas if you have been in your industry or in your career, in your niche for a little bit longer, you can start to really lean into written content to help distinguish you as that authority figure, as that thought leader. And if you're not quite there yet, that's totally okay. You will definitely get there, or the good part is you can outsource this kind of thing. You can hire a VA that specializes in copywriting or content repurposing. You can hire the social media strategist to maybe help with your Instagram captions a bit more. Or you can hire that copywriter to do your newsletters for you. And the third type of content that I want to talk to you about is going to be audio content. Audio is often the type of content that most people just kind of forget about. And in my opinion, it is actually the hardest to create effectively. There are whole industries and careers built off of this one specific type of content, but it works so well, and it works so well for one reason that the other two types of content do not have. And that's because audio content is typically consumed passively. In other words, this means that you don't have to provide all your undedicated attention to consuming that piece of content. You typically consume audio content when you're driving, as you're doing chores, as you're doing other activities. And that's why audio content can be so powerful. So some pros with audio content. Once you master this style of content, it's just going to give people that are listening, people in your audience, your customers, your clients, a whole new level to your brand. They're going to get to know you on a completely different level. It's a powerful format for people to easily consume. Just think of like the audiobooks that you like to listen to as you're doing laundry and dishes. Or think about the podcast that you like to listen to when you're on a run or driving in the car. But there are actually big cons to creating this type of content, and a lot of it has to do with time, skills, money, and energy. To effectively create audio content, you do actually have to invest some money into better equipment, because if the audio is bad, people are more likely to just not listen at all. So you really are going to need that nicer microphone, the nicer editing software. You might have to dedicate time and energy to really thinking out your ideas and maybe scripting them. And you have to be in a stage where you're able to communicate in an advanced way to effectively get your thoughts and your ideas out as audio only without the visual component. which this is a skill set that is hard to develop. It takes time to get better at it. So who should create this type of content? This is going to come more naturally to certain industries, skill sets, and niches. Think of the public speakers, the comedians, the musicians, the influencers that talk on camera or kind of publicly on a daily basis. And now, if you aren't that, that's totally okay. Take me as an example. Personally, I've had a podcast on my to-do list, on my dream list for a very long time. And after being a content strategist for over 10 years and producing my own content at a high volume for the last 5, this is when I finally decided to dive into this audio format. It's taken me a long time to get here, and I've had to practice in a lot of different ways. I've done a lot of public speaking. I've done a lot of different videos, and I've created in other formats, in other mediums to prepare me for producing audio only type of content. I wasn't always ready, and I know it's still going to be a journey and I have a lot to learn, but just know that this type of content is really for that advanced business owner that has time to dedicate to enhancing the skill set. So while there are 3 different types of content to create, and you might like one more than the other, you are eventually going to want to have a well-rounded strategy where you are creating all 3 at some level or some capacity. So yes, start with just one if you are new to the game and slowly work your way up to creating different types of content. But if you're ready to take it to the next level, the content system might be for you. I've created such an advanced system where you can create all 3 different types of content effectively, showing up on social media and on other content marketing platforms with 30 plus pieces of content each and every week. If you want to learn more, head to the link in the description below. Otherwise, I will see you next week, and don't forget to hit subscribe.